Well guys, as part of our coverage on midweek, we're going to be building a Carnifex. But this is going to be a little bit of a different one. This is going to be built in 2 stages and is also going to have some conversion work worked into it. So what we'll be doing, we'll explain in just a moment. As you can see, obviously it's a Carnifex, so it's going to be nice and big and chunky. Done a few little things in our prep stage which is going to make this build a little bit more interesting and a little bit longer. So if you want to bear with us and see some nice conversion work, stay tuned. So we'll move this out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do is we have our 60mm base, we've got our tail, and we have our 2 legs. Now with the legs on this base, we're considering having the Nid standing on something. Now what's he going to be standing on? He's going to be standing on this poor chap. We have a space wolf who's been skewered through the torso and is missing a hand. So what we're thinking of doing, this is a bit on the fly, so bear with us while we actually work the bugs out of this, excuse the pun, as we build. So what we need to do is take the tail, add the glue into the tail section for the legs, then gonna get the legs and press them into place. And they're going to be sort of widely splayed open as far as we can really model them. So with the legs now in place, as you can see, that's more or less the way the fax would usually stand. Okay, so what we're actually planning to do, if we move those out of the way for a moment, we're going to bring in our poor old space wolf, and he's going to be roughly about there on the base. And we're going to have one of the feet of the Carnifex possibly pinning him down. Pinning our wolf down by one leg. Or maybe just clasping him like so. Very hard to see under the close cam. Let me see if I move my hand out of the way. So something along the lines of, oh, hang on. Let's try and do this so we can actually see what's going on. Let's see. Get the hole in the right position. So something roughly like that. Stepping on this guy who's pretty much had it. And when the torso's been modelled, one of the lower claws on the right hand side of the body will actually be skewering this guy down to the ground as well. So that explains the actual hole in his armour. The claw is actually just going to slice through that there. So our next step then is to glue our marine down. So on the base, I'm going to get as much glue as I can and just spread it out along the base. There's not going to be a lot of opportunity for this model to actually be in contact with the base. So if we place him about there, sort of hanging off the edge of the base a little bit, we'll then take the Fex's legs and just completely cover this foot, which is the one that will be on the base, and this one which will be on the marine. And then with a little bit of tinkering, I'm going to have to again work out exactly where these legs need to be. So somewhere along the lines of maybe pressing them down on his shoulder pad. And again, we're just going to have to hold it in place for a few moments while the glue takes. So something like that for our initial bit of the base. And we have our legs here as well, which probably need to be bent out of shape a little bit more. like so. Now if we don't like the position of the marine's legs because they're sort of off the base a little bit, what we can do once the model is complete is add some basing material and build that up a little bit, make it look a bit more rough. So with that complete, we'll then move on. So the next thing we need to do now is we're going to create the torso. Now this is just going to be built as per usual, but we're going to be doing something different when we actually have the torso built. The idea for this Carnifex is that he's going to be standing up straight. So this torso, once it's built, is going to be reversed. So the head is going to go into the area where the tail is, or should be, and where the tail goes will be where where the head goes is where the tail is going to attach to the torso. That way we've got something that's more upright and a bit more aggressive looking when we come to actually finish the model off. So what we'll do now is glue the two halves of our torso together. And take the other half once we have the glue in. Like so. And then we'll take the top carapace, or carapace, I don't know what way you pronounce it. It's as bad as my mentioning of that paint company that I can't really pronounce properly, Vahello. Watch the painting videos. So we'll just add some more glue around this, around the top. We'll then just place the carapace into position. And this is just the normal position, so if you're following this and you're not wanting to build a standy up fax, this is a part that you can just follow normally, as there's no changes happen to the model at this stage. Same with the base. There's no real requirement for conversion or anything to do those legs the way we've done them there. So with that in place, we then have the back carapace, which needs to go on again in the same position as it normally would go, like so. So just in that area there. So what I need to do is just run some glue across there, and let's have a look on the inside of the carapace and see where we can add it on the inside of this part. With that done, the carapace for the beast will sit into place like so. So this would normally be how the Carnifex would stand. This is where the head would go, and this is where the tail would go. We have our two ball joints for the arms, and it would be a rather low slung torso, which suits the nids quite nicely. But if you want something that looks a bit more like it's a bit more important on the battlefield, we'll be doing it as a standy up. So that will be where the head will go, and the arms, and then the tail down at the bottom. Make it a bit more upright. So with that complete, we'll now move on a bit further. So the next step here is the head. Nice and simple, two pieces. Now for the conversion that we're doing, we're going to be adding this, which is a claw off another Carnifex, or sorry, off a warrior. This is just one of the monstrous creature sprue bits, just a claw that we're chopping off the arm, and we're actually going to add this as a horn to the top of the head. So what we need to do first is just glue the head together, just again as per normal build. Without dropping the parts everywhere. So the two halves will sit together quite nicely. So we've obviously picked the head with the tusks to make them look as aggressive as possible and as spiky as possible. So the horn now that we are creating is going to go on the very front piece of carapace, more or less where the model's forehead will be. So we just take a run of glue and just run it the full length of that piece. and set it down like so. So this may be a little overkill, but for something that we're trying to plan out as being as spiky and aggressive looking as possible, I don't think that's too bad at all. So when that's painted, that'll look very nice. So we'll move this out of the way and let that dry and continue on. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on this claw. Now this is the left hand side upper claw. This is the larger of the two claws that will be on, the two types of claws that will be on. Now what we're going to do is we have two marines. You've seen the first one that we've been stamping on and skewering with one of the small claws on the right hand side. This one is going to be up. We're going to cut the claw at this top angle. We're going to angle this out, straighten that angle out so that the claw and this forearm piece are straight. And we're going to have this guy, this other marine, hanging from the end of this claw as if the Nid is now bringing him in and is going to chomp him down or just throw him away. So what we need to do is we have a cut example that we're going to show exactly how this cut will go. So this is the claw as it's cut, and when we angle the claw out, we're going to have this big gap. Okay? Now we're actually just going to go ahead and use this claw, and we'll show you the process of cutting with this one. So to cut with this, we need to take our craft knife, and we're aiming just to get it just where that forearm ends, and very gently rocking with the blade to get a good even cut. And if we can maybe just bend it out once it's cut most of the way through, bend it out like so, then take the craft knife and flatten those edges out. So there, and on this side as well. And that gives us the same effect from our example cut one. So the next thing we need to do is we need to work on actually getting this claw to be sort of straight and stay in place. So what we need to do now is we need to pin this part. Now to pin this, we're going to need the following. We're going to need a paper clip, a pin vise with some drill bits, and we're going to need a bit of green stuff. Now the green stuff is going to act as the filler to this joint. The paper clip will act as the strength of the joint and will actually keep that part of the claw in place. We're going to super glue that in. We're then going to take the green stuff, fill the gap up, and with a couple of sculpting tools, just make it look like it's more muscle tissue. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to drill with our pin vise. If we select, that one should be about right. And we just open up the pin vise, slip our drill bit in, maybe in a bit further than that, until it's just the actual cutting face actually showing on the drill bit. And then from this part of the arm, we're going to try and select more or less somewhere central, and we're going to drill in. As you can see how the pin vise works, this piece would move if I hold it with my thumb, or my index finger, and twist with my thumb and my middle finger. And you can then see the swarf coming out, which is more or less the excess plastic that we're actually drilling out. It's called the swarf. And we just drill in for a little bit. Reverse the drill when we've gone deep enough and gently pull it back out. So that's only maybe a 3 or 4 mil, probably more of a 4 mil depth hole. We'll then take our paper clip, we'll straighten a piece of it out, say about this little segment here, which is good and straight as it is. And the other thing we need is some clippers. So with our bit of thing here ready to go, just take the clippers, bang, cut a little bit out, Move that to one side. We'll then see just how deep this hole goes. Like so. So now that's in place, we can now see roughly how much we're going to need. So if we take that out and we're going to bend it to be roughly 90 degrees, place that back in the hole, and we're going to see that is pretty much where we want it. So at that, we'll lay the claw out in the position we need it to be in. Place our bit of cut paper clip back into the hole. Lay it down flat. And then because it's being wedged in a hole, we can now bend it to match better with the top of the claw. We can now see where we need to drill for this piece. So we just need to drill slightly forward of center, so about here. It's the same process as before. Try and keep the hole as straight as possible. This is not really an exact science, but the closer you get, the better the effect will be when the model is complete. So reverse the drill, pull it out gently, and we have our second hole. Remove the swarf from the drill bit, and now place the end of the paper clip in like so, and there we have it. And that is exactly in the angle that we need it to be for the effect that we're trying to go for. So at this point, pull this all out. We'll now use some Filiglue, which is Filiglue Black. It's just a very good industrial strength super glue. We're going to dab a little bit onto the very end over the hole. Slide our first piece in, and then on the corresponding segment of the arm we'll do the same thing, trying not to use too much glue and being very careful with the glue in the first place. Get everything into position like so. And that's basically our arm now ready for the green stuff filler. So we'll move that to the side now and we'll let that dry. So while that's drying, while the super glue and the claw is drying, we're going to create the green stuff that we need to fill the gap in the arm. Now, under close cam here you'll see, you should all know what green stuff looks like. You've seen it in hobby stores, Games Workshop stores, that sort of thing. Now we're going to be needing this to be as fine as possible, so we're going to actually avoid using the piece right up the middle. And that's because the two colours have already joined, the hardening process has already begun in the middle. That's fine if you're doing it for terrain, like in our Space Wolf painting. We just mix the green stuff by taking a block and putting that down on the base. It doesn't matter if there's any hard bits in that or not, it's not going to make any difference. But if we need something as fine, to be as fine as possible, we're going to cut segments away from the middle and actually just leave this segment in the middle. So we'll just take the craft knife and just cut away like that, and similar sort of distanced line on that side, from there and from there. So this is equaling a little bit of wastage, but if you're going to be doing some green stuff on basing work at some other point, and it's not going to make much of a difference. You'll be able to use that stuff and you'll not have wasted anything. So move that to the side. We're now just going to create this green stuff and we're going to mix it together. We also need a glass of water, and we need to keep the green stuff damp as we need it. As in need it like a kneading dough for bread, not need it as in I absolutely gotta have it. But all we need to do is just keep stretching it out, folding it over and over again in your hands, making sure that the fingers you're using are still quite damp. If we dab a bit of water into my hand, then we can start to roll and stretch out this green stuff as it mixes. And what we're basically wanting as an end result is a sort of a snot green colour, a uniformly snot green colour. That means that it is actually mixed correctly and that there's no colours, there's no areas in the green stuff that have slightly higher density of filler or hardener than another bit. So with that mixed to as good as we need it to be, actually need as in, you know, the proper knead, I must have it now, than the other kneading bread. We're going to bring our claw arm back in, and what we need to do now is just basically plug the gap, wrap the green stuff around the joint, spread it out, pull it out as much as we can. Now this is quite basic green stuff work, so it isn't going to be overly pretty, but because it's a Tyrannid, it doesn't need to be. All we're wanting to represent here is the muscle tissue stretching out to let the claw take that shape. So with that actually done, and filler glue all over me, we're then going to take a sculpting tool. This is just a standard sculpting tool you should be able to get from most hobby stores. And what we need to do now is just make the effect of some muscle tissue actually on the part. So really all this requires is just pressing, stroking it out, making the beginning of each pass from the actual joint, from the inside of the joint. Like that. So again, this is not very pretty looking. As I'm not the best sculptor in the world. All we need to do to carry that around is to roll the bits of green stuff just around the joint. Like so. You can see that sort of muscle shaped pattern coming out as we roll the part round. And then from the other side we need to do the exact same thing as before. Set the piece down and we just roll it out, doing the lines from the elbow joint as much as we can. Let's see if we can't flatten that out a bit more by drawing the lines towards it. Now we just have a close look at that. And I think for the purposes of our model, for being something quick to do, that's not half bad at all. Okay, so shouldn't need any adjustments. So for the meantime, we'll now move that out of the way, and we'll have to work on the actual marine that is being skewered, because he needs some green stuff work done to him as well. So here he is, our hapless, incredibly gored up marine. I don't know what it is about me, but when I'm told do someone being mauled, they generally have to be practically chopped in half. So we take the green stuff once again and just dampen it a bit more just to work it properly. This will also help create the bonding agent between the claw and the actual character that we have here. So if we get a small ball of the green stuff, and what we need to do is in that shoulder, in the hole in his shoulder, we need to shove this green stuff down into it and start to work out all the gore, the sort of gory patterns that are going to be on not only him but the claw as well. So we just drop that piece of green stuff in, dip our sculpting tool into some water, and now just a process of poking that green stuff down into the gap and start to fill this piece of the model up. And the more the better. So we're filling this right up as much as we can. Taking the blade section, we're going to have to start to carve out the area where the claw is going to be sitting on this guy, like so. So then what we'll do is drag some of the green stuff out, make it look like there's just sort of stuff spilling out of his wounds. Not too intense at the moment. We're going to place the claw first, which we're going to do now. So with the claw, we're going to slide it in like so. So there's going to be dangling off the end of this claw, and there's going to be green stuff all over it from the actual wounds that this space wolf has actually had. So we need to get some more green stuff, warm it up in our hands a little bit, roll it around so it's a bit more pliable. Take a segment of it, and then we're going to drop it in on top of the claw. So about there. Then dampen our sculpting tool again, and then press the green stuff down over the claw. And take our sharper end, and we're going to use it to drag out all this mess that used to be this guy's shoulder joint. And for just effects, if we stab the bits of green stuff, drag them out, make it look as jaggy and as nasty as possible. Work it in around that claw, and the claw is becoming a little bit loose. We press it just a little bit further in. Press down on it a bit more. Get that really sort of messed up look in over the shoulder. It's maybe a little bit too broad a gap, but considering this guy has just had a giant claw rammed through him, the fact that his face is still doing something other than being dead, I think is a bit of a testament to the space wolf doing this. Okay, let's just readjust this hopefully one final time. Get the green stuff to be worked down in around the claw, So this guy looks absolutely messed up. Like so. So this guy is now dangling. He's on his last legs. He's now ready to be added to the torso. So if we now move this out of the way and let this set a little bit. We can now bring in our other hapless marine. And what we need to do now is actually put the torso on top. So if we take the torso, and the way it should normally sit is like that, being very low slung as I mentioned before. This time it's going to be reversed and he's going to be standing more upright. Now at the same time, due to posing this model, the way we're going to be planning to pose this model, one of these lower claws on this side has to be skewering this guy. So here we have the claw, the offending claw that is going to be skewering this marine. Now what we need to do is actually place that claw into the marine's wound. In as good a position as we can get it. So say somewhere about there. What we'll then do is figure out where the torso needs to be for that to work. So something like that. So the guy is this Carnifex is definitely looking off in the other direction towards the marine that he's actually just skewered. So then what we're going to do is add a liberal amount of glue to the inside of here. I'm also going to take some green stuff, maybe not that amount, and roll it out in my fingers. And then I'm going to wrap it around this top edge here where the torso will connect. And just leave it sitting more or less like that. And if we want to add a bit more glue, actually add glue onto this surface. And then we're going to place the torso in, holding the torso by the tail so as not to upset any of the gluing that we've already done. Right, well with that sort of molded, I'm then going to cheat and I'm going to add some more filler glue just around that edge to contact both the plastic, the green stuff all together. So with that in place, we'll then apply the claw, stick it back into the marine's wound, readjust our torso, and then pull this all off again. We're going to actually fill a glue in this arm, which is actually starting to become quite messy, but if we can get any structural integrity out of the arm, then we're going to have to exploit that. Unfortunately, this is rather hard to see as I'm actually holding the model pretty much all in place at the minute. So what I may actually do now is take my glass of water, prop the whole thing up, which is very hard to see under close cam unfortunately, but this we can leave now for a period of time, say about half an hour. After that half hour, we'll come back to it, we'll look and see if everything is now set. If it has set, happy days, we can move on. Apply our other claws, apply our head, job done basically. We have a few accessories as well. Obviously we're not going to record this half hour, so don't worry about it. Pause the video, go get yourself a cup of tea, pretend it was half an hour, come back and we'll finish this model off. So with the torso now having left to set, we just pull our glass of water away. We can now see what the pose of our Fex is starting to look like. So the next thing along is we're just going to add the other claws that aren't doing anything. So we have the other claw which is holding the marine, we're not going to put on now, we're going to put it on last. We've got one other claw on this side to put on, and we've got the other small claw to put down the bottom area on this side. So here are our two claws that we need now. So if I move that out of the way. So we have the large one which will go on this side on the upper half, and we have this one which is the lower claw for the other side. So we just take some plastic glue to this one and just do a little bit on the ball joint and just spread it out as much as we can, just using the needle to spread it out. We'll then place this claw put it into place, and have it sitting up a little bit higher than the other claw so that it's not in the way, like so. So round on the other side then we have another claw, we have a lower down claw to place. So if we do the same drill again, just take some plastic glue, just a dab, and just use the side of the needle point, spread it out as much as we can. We'll then place it to be down and more out of the way, so that there's plenty of room for our big converted claw to go on, like so. So now with all of that in place, we're then going to take the head that we created earlier, you can see with our amazingly oversized horn, and it is now going to be glued in to be about there. Show it a bit better on this side maybe. It's going to be looking more or less in the direction that the big claw will be looking in. So all we need is more plastic glue, spread it out across this, as much as we can. Now if I pick the model up, you're not going to be able to see this under close cam very well, but we're going to angle it in such a way that the other claw will be allowed to follow. Let's hold that for a few moments. Maybe if I lift it out of camera shot for a couple of moments and just adjust the setting on the head a little bit more, and we're going to add a bit more glue. Where I'm adding glue now is at the top, where the top carapace meets the top carapace on top of the head, into that gap. Just so that there's as much contacting the model as possible. There's as much glue contacting the model as possible. Like so. So there we have the beastie's head in place. And we'll just move that out of the way. And for our final step, we're actually going to take the close cam, we're going to zoom it out so that you'll be able to see and appreciate the actual complete pose of this model perfectly in focus. So now we've got the camera out, you can now see the pose of this Carnifex a bit more clearly. You can see the efforts that we're putting into the pose here. You can sort of start to gauge what we're looking at. Something that's a bit more aggressive, standing up a bit more straight. Skewering our poor Space Wolf down here underfoot. And our next one is going to be out straight on the claw, roughly about here, with the Carnifex being all aggressive and looking at him. So if we set that down, just to one side for a moment, we'll now bring our claw back in with our hapless Space Wolf hanging from it. And what we need to do now is, because this has to be a very fast glue, we're going to be using our filler glue again, but this time we're also going to be using the conditioning pen that comes with filler glue. And this is called the Kicker pen. This will condition one half or one surface of this model, of the piece, so when we apply glue to the other part, it'll be a snap fit and shouldn't take very long to actually glue in place. The arm, the claw has been reinforced with the bit of pinning that we did earlier, so there shouldn't be any droopage with that. The green stuff has also been lying for about half an hour, so it should be rigid enough to hold our Space Wolf in place. So we'll take the Kicker pen, we're going to apply the Kicker pen to the inside of the ball joint, so that we know there's as much of it in there as we can get. This just basically cleans off any oily residue that might be left. Plastic models do get it sometimes, but not as often. But we're taking no precautions and we want this to be a fast, tight glue. So we'll then take our filler glue, the black filler glue, black because it's awesome, and just see if we can get just a small dab about there, and just make it that sort of drop, because when we press the two parts together that'll spread out and should give us a good solid glue. So at this point now we have to know the pose immediately for this part of the model, otherwise we're in trouble. So you may not be able to see it under close very well, but let's see, the other claw is now in the way. With that plastic glue, with that glued in with plastic glue, that shouldn't be a problem. There we go. I'll just hold the model in place for a few moments. And just readjust the head pose a little bit. Make it look like he's more trying to look up at this thing as he's pulling it in. So like that. So there we have a very dynamic Carnifex, claw stretched out, grabbing this poor guy, lifting him up to finish him off, probably bite him through the head or something like that. Standing up a little bit taller than a standard Carnifex. All in all, that's rather cool, I think. So now with the final step, well, with the build more or less complete, we have a final little step. We want this guy to be particularly spiky. I don't know why, it was Warren's decision. So we have a whole ton of little spiky bits we're going to add here and there and everywhere. These all come in the Carnifex kit, so, and if you have any bits boxes that you've been building Tyranids from before, cut down claws. Cut down claws are very handy. A cut down claw obviously is what we've used for the horn and the head of the Carnifex, and that's more or less what we're trying to get at, is something nice and spiky. We'll probably not use all these bits. Warren would have me use every single bit in our entire bits box, but that's him, he's not me. So I bring the Carnifex in, looking all nice and evil as he should, looking up towards this marine, which is very hard to show you under close cam. I don't know what's going on with my hands. He's looking up towards this guy. Pretty much job done here with that. So we're going to start adding our spiky bits all over this thing. So we'll take a number of these, sort of little extra carapace bit with a spike on it, and we'll start to actually glue them down, if I can show it on close cam properly, down the center carapace. So all we're going to do is just add some glue. I'm going to stick them roughly on at least on every armored panel, like that. And just make sure that these are actually lining up. As much as he is a biological creature, symmetry always looks better. And with it being Tyranids, I'm sure that the Hive Mind has enough symmetry in its own designs sometimes. But we want something that looks seriously aggressive, and I think an incredibly spiky Carnifex is definitely one of the ways to go. Now also be careful, because at this point in the build this is still quite wobbly, as you can see, so we're trying not to press down too hard on the model. We don't, however, want to take all day, so that's the guys along the back, looking quite aggressive. We'll stick our tail bit on, which we're also going to add another spike to. We're just going to add it just along the back, so much like that, and place it somewhere along the middle. That sits pretty good there, like that. Our 3-pointed tail. We'll then glue that into place. Like so. And then we just have a few little random spikes we could maybe just stick somewhere, nowhere in particular, I suppose. Let's take one coming off each behind these two big back pieces. So we just add some glue. Press one in. Oops. Press one on about there. I have to hold the model by the torso at this point. And then take its identical part, add some glue to it, and put it in the same place on the opposite side. So something like that. It's kind of cool. I think that'll probably do it. We have enough spiky bits. He's going to be an absolute pain to store. So move those off to the side. And there we've got one very spiky, very aggressive looking Carnifex doing over a couple of Space Wolves. Much like, I quite like that at all. I really do quite like that. Not that I don't like Space Wolves, but you know, a giant creature doing over a couple of them is definitely a bonus in my day. So, now that we've done, or that we are done, drop your comments below now that you've seen this and seen what we've done. What have you guys done? Conversion work is always a lot of fun. It's my favourite part of the hobby in particular. I mean, you've seen my Stone Templar army, hopefully, throughout many of our Aspio wars, that sort of stuff. But let us know what you guys do. If any of you want to get in touch with us, throw us some pictures of your own conversion work. Let us see what you guys do. Now, obviously, we've been building this for aesthetics. In our gaming club, this is just a regular Carnifex with whatever weapon layouts that we can more or less put on it. So it may not be completely codex accurate, but for a nice big centerpiece for the Tyranid army that we have in here, the Bugs of War, it'll go along quite nicely with the other two that we modelled up. Or sorry, actually the other three that we modelled up, we now have 4. So drop your comments below, let us know what you think, and see you in the next video.